Welcome into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, week number 11, part number 1. We're starting off here Wednesday night. We got Thursday night, Friday night lights, and the top of the Saturday card with our first guest, our leadoff hitter for this week, Matt Josephs at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter, ESPN Richmond. Matt, welcome in. How you feeling, buddy?
Doing well. I've always considered myself more of a Juan Pierre than a Luis Castillo, so I don't mind leading off when it comes to college football.
A little, 2003 Florida Marlins reference there? Matt, that was well done.
Yeah, my all-time favorite baseball player is Juan Pierre. So when I played, I tried to bunt like him. I tried to be a pest like him, and he was my favorite.
All right, man. Well, we need to lead off, maybe take an extra base here. And high on base percentage guy. And we got Matt Josephs doing the job. 7-3 best bet so far this season, winning last week. James Madison over. So, guys, we got a best bet coming your way as well. But if you're new to Every Game on the Board, we hit every single game on the college football slate going down in rotation order. If you look at the odds screen, those little numbers next to the team name, that is the rotation number. We are going 107, 108, Eastern Michigan, Toledo, down to 139, 140, UConn in James Madison. So kicking it off here with tonight's action. That's Wednesday, November 8th, Matt. We got Maction, 7:30 Eastern Michigan and Toledo. The Rockets, heavy favorites here, minus 19.5, as high as minus 20 out there, 45 being the total. EMU, Chris Creighton, good off of good being the underdog. I don't know, though. This Toledo team's pretty good in the MAC, man. What are you thinking to kick us off?
32-14-1. Chris Creighton, a road underdog ATS as a head coach at Eastern Michigan. We've talked about, we've had them several times. Look, they're a hard team to figure out. They don't score, but they play great defense. And tonight you've got showers and wind. 10 to 15 mile an hour winds for this game, which I think will kind of even things out just a little bit. Obviously, if you want to beat Eastern Michigan, you can run the ball. If you want to beat Toledo, you can run the ball. So that might make us see a lot of running in this game. I said on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt, anytime that you've got a road underdog as Eastern Michigan, you just take them. You even if it's just pizza money. So I got a plus 20 here, Drew, for the game tonight. I take Eastern Michigan plus 20. I'd almost always consider also Toledo's team total under. It's 32.5 on FanDuel. I think that there's an opportunity here potentially for them to get held to maybe 31 and then you win. So Eastern Michigan plus the points. Chris Creighton as a road underdog ATS is pretty money. It's a pizza bet for tonight because the other two games are not very good.
Okay, fair enough, Matt. And yeah, I mean, bringing the weather into it, to cover 3 touchdowns here, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So good stuff to start us off here. 3 MAC games. Next one up, 109, 110, 7 o'clock Eastern. Bowling Green and Kent State. We get BG minus 10.5 point favorites, 40.5 or 41 being the total. So Bowling Green at Kent State from Kent, Ohio, Matt.
Yeah, you'll never catch me laying that many points on the road with Bowling Green. I don't care if they're playing a high school. No offense to the Falcons, who play very good defense. If you are, and we've talked about it in my segments, and if you're new to my segment, I just don't lay double digits on the road with anybody. The back door's open, and weird things happen in those situations. It feels like a lot of the bad beats people have is because they take the road favorites, and somehow late touchdowns do them in, or something weird happens. Plus, Bowling Green's offense isn't good enough. The one thing to watch as we get closer to this game, running back Terrion Stewart, who is their best player offensively, he is questionable with this one, was seen in crutches last game. He is a large part of their offense. So without him, I don't expect them to do a lot of scoring tonight. There's a 60% chance of rain, 10 to 15 mile per hour winds for this one. So that certainly comes into play. Not that I'm telling you to take Kent State, because Kent State's one of the worst teams in the country. They're coming off a really tough loss. I think it's the wagon wheel game against Akron. But this one should be really ugly between the two. There's no bet here, Drew. If Terrion Stewart doesn't play, I might consider Bowling Green's team total under. It was 25.5, but that number may disappear once it gets announced. Your best bet's to probably just stay away from this game, though, overall.
Okay, we'll see if you have one in the last one. Akron, the Zips, Miami of Ohio, laying 17 at home. Low total here, 38. So almost half of the total here is what Miami of Ohio is going to have to cover. But I'll tell you, this Zips team's not very good, Matt. Heavy favorite again in the MAC, but this time it's at home. Any interest in laying the wood with Miami of Ohio?
So Akron's really bad, as you said. Their team total was 11.5, and it's probably going to go down a little bit because, as you just mentioned, the total's gone down. Because when I first wrote this up on my notes, it was 41, and now it's in the 30s. Clear weather. It's funny because these games are all being played somewhat close to them. And we talk about rain and wind in some of these other games tonight. And this one, it's kind of clear, a little bit of wind, but not a ton. Miami, Ohio is one game ahead of Ohio, Bowling Green, and Buffalo in the standings. This is kind of where there's three things you want to consider, Drew, when you look at a lot of these games that we talk about. Bowl eligibility. If there is no bowl eligibility, you've got some teams who are just ready to go into the offseason. We'll tell you about who those teams are over this thing. Standings, obviously, this game's important for Miami, Ohio. They need to win this game because they want to go to Detroit for the MAC championship game. And then kind of just look ahead situations. Obviously, there's rivalry games coming up. There's FCS games coming up and all sorts of stuff. So those are just some of the things that we kind of notice here. Miami, Ohio is hosting Buffalo next week. It's a large game in terms of the standings, but I think Miami, Ohio can name their score here. I mean, look, Avion Smith has been okay. He's a little inconsistent at times, so they're going to want to let him do as much as he can. Obviously, he's the starter now that Brett Gabbert's out, and he's got plenty of experience, and he should do whatever he wants against Akron here, but at some point, do they pull back a little bit? Do they get ready for this next game? So it's tough. You probably want to play maybe Miami, Ohio in the first half here, maybe see them get out to a fast start, but laying the whatever it is for the whole game, they might pull back a little bit later on. Maybe if you have that full game and you sense that they're kind of taking guys out, maybe you put a small bet on Akron to kind of hedge a little bit if you need to.
Man, you mentioned they're all kind of close proximity to each other. Have you ever been to a MAC game in person?
I have not.
Okay.
Maybe I have technically when Temple was in the MAC, but I wasn't in Ohio for any of those games. But no, I have not been to a MAC game. It's on my bucket list, obviously.
Yeah, go to a midweek MAC game. That'd be fun. We got Thursday, November 9th up next here, right in your neck of the woods. Virginia in Louisville, 50.5 being the total, minus 20. That's the Cardinals at home. I know you were at ACC Media Day for basketball, but they're near the program with Virginia. What are you thinking in the ACC Thursday night?
It's tough for Virginia. And obviously, I was not able to see, as we've talked about in our state, we're not allowed to bet on games involving the state schools. So I wasn't able to see what Virginia's team total is. I might look at the under for Virginia's team total. Tony Muskett's questionable for this game. Anthony Colandrea, who they were hoping to redshirt, would be the starter if he's not. This is a UVA team, I think, that is basically ready to. I mean, look, they played really well. They won that game against North Carolina, and then they pushed the Canes to overtime before losing it. And then last week, it was just a disaster at home against Georgia Tech. I had UVA in that game. Obviously, they didn't show up, and they lost by 28 points. They're back home next week. And then, of course, the final game is the rivalry game against Virginia Tech. I don't know what we get here. Louisville, short week. Louisville's still technically in the standings. They're a game and a half behind Florida State for first. They're a game up on Georgia Tech right now in second place. And then they're a game and a half up on a whole bunch of schools. So Louisville needs this game. They were pretty impressive against Virginia Tech last week. And they have a Miami road game up next, but they'll have that extra time to prepare. Louisville's going to name their score here. I would look potentially at a Virginia team total under. I don't know how much scoring they're going to do in this one.
All right, Matt. Southern Miss and UL Lafayette is the next game up, as we got a double header here Thursday, guys. Minus 10. That is the Ragin' Cajuns at home, 51 being the total. These two teams not very far from each other, but you liking anything here in Lafayette, Louisiana?
40% chance of rain. So that's something certainly to watch for. We're doing this on Wednesday. The weather can completely change, and there could be no chance of rain coming up. But I kind of like what I've seen a little bit out of Southern Miss. They had a bye week a couple weeks ago, and then they reevaluated everything. They changed the offensive play caller. They came out of the bye week, and they lost a really high-scoring game against App State. Then last week, they get the win over UL Monroe. I'm mad at myself because I should have taken Southern Miss. They were like a 1.5, 2-point favorite at home. Now they travel to Louisiana, and Louisiana has been a really tough team to figure out. They won at South Alabama, and then they lost at Arkansas State. I almost want to go Southern Miss here, but the problem is they're on the road. They're not as good of a team on the road. Their team total is 20.5. I think they could score some points here. Maybe you look at the over 20.5 for Southern Miss's team total here. I think they're going to play pretty well in this game, but I don't trust them as much on the road. It's great to have that momentum and play a couple games at home. Now they're on the road. I don't know necessarily if that's going to translate away from Hattiesburg.
We got Friday Night Lights up next, Matt. North Texas, the Mean Green versus the SMU Mustangs here. Southern Methodist, 9 p.m. Eastern kick. Big number, minus 16.5. minus 17 actually at most shops. Also a high total here. Both offenses can move at 67.5 being the total. I kind of like a lot of points here, Matt. What are you thinking?
Watch the status of Preston Stone. Obviously, he's got a little
Yeah.
bit of an injury, so that's something you certainly want to see. But yeah, if you get all indications Preston Stone's going to play, I'd play maybe an SMU first half here. This is one of those situations where if they get a large lead and they don't have to keep playing Preston Stone, they'll take him out. They're tied for first place in the AAC with Tulane and UTSA. So, like, there's a lot at stake here. North Texas plays no defense, none whatsoever. Like, they have no interest in playing defense, but their offense is pretty good. And maybe this would be the type of game where after SMU gets out to the large lead, you bet North Texas live because their offense can close the gap and maybe they take Preston Stone out. If we find out Preston Stone's out, I think there's going to be some value potentially on North Texas, depending upon where the line falls. Their offense is really good. Chandler Rogers fits really well in this offense, but like if Stone plays, SMU is going to name their score here, and certainly that's a situation where I would wait and live bet North Texas. But that's something to watch as we get closer to Friday.
Another good one here for Friday. We get Wyoming and UNLV in the Mountain West, 10:45 Eastern, 7:45 Pacific here. So some late night Friday night lights in Las Vegas, 51 being the total. UNLV, man, they've been a wagon this year, Matt. -5 in the hook at home. You like anything with the Cowboys and the Rebels?
Yeah, I had the over in that game against New Mexico. I mean, mostly because of New Mexico, the New Mexico side of things. Their overs have been tremendous, mostly because they don't stop anybody and their offense has been better. Obviously, UNLV did a lot of the heavy lifting in that one. The total was like 60-61, and UNLV got 56 of those points. Interesting with regards to the standings here. UNLV is in second place behind Air Force. They're tied with Fresno State, so this is an important game. And then next week, they travel to Air Force. So there might be one eye looking forward to this one. Wyoming's coming off the nice win over Colorado State. They're 2 games behind Air Force in the standings, so they're kind of interesting with regard to this sort of thing. Wyoming's a team you back at home, not so much on the road. I've never been a big Andrew Peasley fan at quarterback. At Utah State, he wasn't great. Now he's at Wyoming. He's playing all right, but I don't love playing this team on the road. The question is just where's UNLV's focus with the game against Air Force next week?
Top of the Saturday card up next, Saturday, November 11th here. We're talking week 11 college football. Every game on the board podcast presented by Viva Tequila Seltzer, vivatequilaseltzer.com. Get it shipped to your house, guys. 4.5% ABV, 0 sugar. Not much of a hangover at all. vivatequilaseltzer.com and betonline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. FAU and ECU up next. That's Florida Atlantic hosting East Carolina, 4:00 Eastern here in Boca Raton, Matt. -7 flat, pretty much across the board. That's the Owls. 45 being the total.
Wow, that was really good. I don't know if that was your first time breaking that out, Drew, but like that was a pretty good owl. Where did you go to school for that sort of thing?
The Owls, no, not really. It's a pretty cool mascot. I've been around them a little bit in life, and I guess I'm a local FAU fan. It is the closest university to where I'm talking right now in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, just right up the road, and I kind of like them. I've had a little success betting on them, but we'll see how Todd Herman does. It's -7 across the board. That's what BetOnline has it. 7.5. I thought it was pretty cool, so broke it out. I think it's the second time I've used it here on every game on the board, though, Matt.
I'll be interested to know where FAU's head's at. Obviously, tough loss to UAB. No one should be losing to Trent Dilfer. He's a bad coach. Like, that's a bad loss for Florida Atlantic. And it now puts them 2 games out of first place in the standings. Obviously, they can still try and get second place. They're trying to get their way into this AAC title game. And they've got Tulane at home next week. So that's a huge game. East Carolina's one of the worst offenses in college football. 13-10 loss. They put a lot into that game against Tulane. It was a large game for them, although there were not many people there. They're on the road. They don't score a lot. There's about 10 to 15 mile per hour winds potentially in this game, Drew. So I would lean FAU. I would lean to the under potentially. I don't see what East Carolina is going to contribute to this one. So I think it's an FAU name your score kind of situation if they're focused. If they bounce back after last week's loss, I have more faith in Tom Herman getting his guys ready than say like a Trent Dilfer or whatever like that. So FAU should win this game. I think they just need to name their score because East Carolina is just terrible offensively.
We don't have UAB here, but you're not a big Trent Dilfer fan. I mean, he is a Super Bowl champion, right? He was a high school football coach and now in the same, just making that jump is huge, but you're not a big fan of him?
I think it's one of these things where like, hey, here's a name. Maybe that recruits will know this guy's name. And like, hey, he was in high school. And you can't just make the jump from high school to college. He's done all right. He's got more wins. I don't know what their win total was preseason, but I mean, they've won a couple games. So I guess it's okay.
All right, Matt. We'll move down the list here. An SEC game, Alabama and Kentucky, 12 noon Eastern. We are seeing Bama lay -10 in the hook here at Bet Online. Some shops showing as high as -11, 46.5 being the total. The two longest tenured head coaches in the SEC facing off. What do you like in Alabama and Kentucky?
So obviously, as I haven't had a lot of SEC games in my slate, and I'll say this up front because I believe in honesty. The SEC is not my strong suit. I will dabble every once in a while in a total or a team total if I see something here. So obviously, Drew, please chime in here. But look, this is one of those things where a lot of times you look at the situation and you're like, hey, let me take Kentucky plus the points, and then somehow Alabama covers. Like, it's Alabama. They play really well. They're only a game up on Ole Miss. In theory, well, I guess it's more than that because they beat Ole Miss. But it's one of those things where, this is Kentucky's Super Bowl. This is their season right here, and it's senior day, and we get into the emotions of senior day. And sometimes I handicap senior day a little differently. I don't necessarily do it in this situation. I would lean to Kentucky here, Drew, but Alabama, it's almost back to that point where like you're scared to go up against them. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, they're playing better football right now. I don't know. I've lost a couple times on Kentucky. I think I'm probably tapping out, but yeah, it would be Alabama or pass. Not a game I'm likely going to bet though, Matt. We got Miami and Florida State up next, 3:30 Eastern here on ABC. Matt, you know the ACC pretty well. 14 or 14.5. That is the Seminoles as the home favorite. 50 being the total. This is a pretty big rivalry in the Sunshine State. You like anything with the Canes and the Noles?
So, as usual, with any game in Florida, there's a 40% chance of rain for this one. So that's something to certainly watch as we get closer to Saturday. And in a normal situation, Drew, I'd be like, there's a lot of motivation on the Miami side. Florida State won this game last year in Miami, 45-3. They basically embarrassed them. Florida State's got everything in front of them: the college football playoff, the ACC championship, an undefeated season, all this stuff. They didn't cover last week against Pittsburgh, but they were also without their top two wide receivers. Something to watch as the week goes along. Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, like their status for this game. Obviously, they'll need them for this one. And then you look at the Miami side. Tough loss at NC State, and the questions have to be answered as to what the deal with what's going on with Tyler Van Dyke. Is he still not 100%? Why don't they go to the backup quarterback? Do you trust Mario Cristobal? He's still not good in certain game situations, figuring out timeouts and when to go for it, when not to go for it. But the thing is, I wonder if there's some sort of extra motivation here. It's a huge rivalry game. But if Tyler Van Dyke's not 100% and they're not willing to go to the backup quarterback here, Drew, I mean, I think Florida State could be really ugly. I think Florida State could do some damage here. Their team total on FanDuel's 32.5. Miami's is 17.5. If we find out Tyler Van Dyke's still not 100% and they're still going to go with him, I might go under 17.5 for Miami. It's that nice, neat number, 2 touchdowns and a field goal, and you still win. That's always what you look for in team totals. But I feel like Florida State's going to win this game, and they're going to try and embarrass Miami. Remember, we're now in the situation where you have to not only win games, but you're also trying to impress the CFP committee. So it's not like Florida State's going to get up 41-0 and be like, well, we're done for this one. They may try and go 48-0, 55-0, whatever it is. So this one could get ugly if Miami's offense doesn't show up.
Matt, I was talking to a couple friends, Florida State alums, and they're like, man, we could win all our games and not make the college football playoff. I'm like, I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, college football usually works itself out, man. Do you think the Noles fans should be worried about something like that and their players, coaches?
Oh, no, Matt, I think you're on mute. I don't think so, because I don't think anybody undefeated is going to come out of the Pac-12.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's coming out of the Pac-12. I think if Florida State goes undefeated and wins the ACC, I think they're going to get in. I think their schedule is strong enough that they should get in, but they should not lose any regular season games. That would help.
Vanderbilt and South Carolina up next, 58 being the total, -14. That's the Gamecocks at home. Anything in this one?
I had the over in the South Carolina game last week. That worked out well. Jacksonville State did their part, scored 28 points. South Carolina. I mean, I don't know what to think of South Carolina here, Drew. Like, they didn't look like they were particularly interested in playing Jacksonville State. They're way better than Vanderbilt. Neither team's going to have motivation. 40% chance of rain here. When you have two teams that have no chance of motivation, no interest for anything, you potentially look at the over. But like, I don't know what to expect in this one. Do you have anything as the SEC expert?
Just Vanderbilt's been terrible, man, against the spread. What, just won cash this year? And it was a team that I bet week one. And man, they just really haven't come into their own. And the quarterback injuries as well. Another one, man, South Carolina or pass, actually over might be a look as well, because Vanderbilt just can't stop anybody. And South Carolina's offense, I think, can move the ball, score a bunch of points against a lesser defense here. So actually at 57.5 at Bet Online. Hey, if you need something in Vanderbilt, South Carolina, maybe that would look towards the over. We got Tobacco Road rivalry up next, 8:00 Eastern here, Matt. Duke and UNC, 50.5 being the total, -14 in the hook. That's North Carolina, the Tar Heels at home in Chapel Hill.
So this line's telling me Riley Leonard's not going to play. I would like him to play, and there's a chance that obviously they go back to the third stringer once again, and I think that's going to change things a little bit for Duke. Obviously, they won the game against Wake Forest, but Wake Forest isn't very good. This is a rivalry game. I would wait until as close to kickoff as possible, see if there's any indication, any rumblings that Duke is going to get Riley Leonard for this game. If they don't, I still think there's a chance that Duke can cover this number. Their defense is pretty good. I don't necessarily trust UNC completely, because remember, that loss that they had to Virginia kind of eliminates them from a lot of things. They're playing at Clemson next week. This one will be interesting to watch as we get closer, Drew. UNC won a very close game last year in this series. If we get any sort of rumblings that Riley Leonard's going to play, I would look at Duke here, but this is one I'm not going to lock in yet until we get closer to kickoff.
And Matt, do you know what they call that rivalry, Duke UNC?
There's a bell, I think. I'm pretty sure there's a bell for this one.
It's not the Tobacco Road one? That's something else?
It probably is, but I think there's the Victory Bell, maybe, I think is what they're playing for.
Okay. Virginia Tech, Boston College. Not sure if there's one here, but we get the Hokies -1 in the hook as the road favorite, actually anywhere from -1 to -2. So if you're like in Boston College, that +2 would be at Bet Online. 51 being the total. VT heading up north to BC. You like anything Virginia Tech and Boston College here, Matt?
BC opened a favorite, and now Virginia Tech's the favorite. I don't understand that in the least. To me, the only play here is Boston College. I don't trust Virginia Tech away from home. I've talked about it on my radio show. I've talked about it probably on here. Like, good teams go to die in Chestnut Hill. It's just weird things happen in Chestnut Hill. There's going to be some wind, 10 to 15 miles per hour. Thomas Castellanos has played well. Maybe there's an injury with him. I'm not sure. But unless there's some sort of injury that I don't know about that everybody else does, I'll gladly take Boston College as an underdog here, because I think that Boston College is potentially the better team in this situation. Virginia Tech's really good in Blacksburg, but they're just not very good outside of there.
Matt, we got 2 games left here. Did want to hit the YouTube comments, guys. Anybody listening on YouTube, feel free to comment below. Any questions, we'll answer them on next week's show. Also, let us know where you're watching from. Anything like that is more than welcome, where you agree, where you disagree. We got David Montgomery telling us last week, great show. And Matt, please continue to provide the weather. Not everybody's not liking the weather, Matt. A lot of people are liking it.
I think it's certainly one of those situations where if there is some sort of, and remember, like, what happens is, I always think this is funny, because whenever there's snow in the forecast, you see the total drop and it just plummets like a rock. And then there's some situations where you can get the over at that lower number. Snow doesn't mean the offense is just going to disappear. It means that there's going to be some slippery situations and you break some long plays. Almost rain is like that too. Just because it's raining or getting set to rain, unless it's like a torrential downpour, you could still find some value. It's wind that's bothersome, because the higher wind situations, you can't pass the ball. You're forced to run the ball. Then you're playing strategy. You're forcing teams to punt with the wind and stuff like that. So, there are some important things to kind of consider. I'm excited for our first snover, Drew, which we haven't had, I feel like, in a while. But snow, everybody bets the under, when really the best bet in those type of games are the over when the bottom drops on those totals.
Interesting. Okay. We got Victoria saying Tulane is better than Air Force and James Madison. Guys, if you didn't watch last week, I asked Matt who he thought was the best group of 5 team: Air Force, James Madison, Tulane. She's saying Tulane here, Matt.
No, it's incorrect. I'm sorry, Victoria. We appreciate you watching. James Madison's the best. It's their defense. They're the number one. See, here's the thing I think that's funny, Drew. If no one watches James Madison, if you go to the statistics page, you can't find James Madison anywhere because the NCAA won't even list them. They have the number one rush defense in the league. They are like top 10 in other categories. James Madison's the truth. And if you're a Tulane fan, you better hope the NCAA still keeps rejecting James Madison, because I don't think they're going to lose the rest of the season. And a 12-0 James Madison beats I don't even know I don't think Tulane has a loss, but a 12-0 JMU beats a 12-0 Tulane. They belong in the New Year's Six.
Yeah, Tulane, I think they lost to Ole Miss, but yeah, either way.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And then I guess something here with Ted Lasso from MJ. Season 3 of Ted Lasso was not good. Way too sappy. First 2 seasons were great. I don't know. Are you following what he's talking about?
Well, last week you asked me because I was wearing the Ted Lasso jersey.
Right.
And so we brought that up. I have not seen season 3 yet. I've seen the first 2 seasons a long time ago. I don't have Apple TV, so when they do their free trials, I take advantage of that. But yeah. So yeah, just to tell the people, we're going to do the JMU. Actually, I'll wait. We're doing the JMU game in a couple. So let's keep going with the last 3 that we have.
Yeah, 3 more games here, guys. Thanks to Pete chiming in, saying, what best college football show, period. Well, we appreciate it, Pete, and going each and every week, every game on the board on YouTube and wherever you're downloading your podcast at. Every game on the board at Mid-Major Matt, on Twitter at Drew Martin Betts. NC State, Wake Forest up next. We're seeing Wolfpack off of that big win over Miami. -2 in the hook, -2 as the road favorite here, Matt. 43.5 being the total.
This game's going to have my best bet. So we can either do that now or we can do that later. But this game features my best bet of the segment. So we can move on to the next one and come back to this, whatever you'd like to do.
Sounds good. Georgia Tech, Clemson up next. Clemson, the Tigers, -14-point home favorites, 55.5 being the total.
So Will Shipley looks like he's going to play for Clemson. Jalen Phillips, a safety, and Sheridan Jones, a corner. They're both out for this game. RJ Mickens, a safety. It looks like there's a good chance he's going to play on Saturday. Dabo's funny when he comes on the field and he's like, the final month of the season, we're going to be a really good bet and we're really motivated. And it's easy to say that, Drew, after you have the 15th ranked team in your building for a game and everybody's hyped and you're doing your tradition of storming the field after every victory. Here's the thing, Georgia Tech they're not going to win this game most likely, but they can certainly cover this game. We've talked about, because as we had last week, I gave out Virginia last week. I thought Virginia was going to beat Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has some great wins this season, great road wins this season. They have terrible home losses. At their best, they could beat a lot of teams in this country. I'm not a believer that Clemson all of a sudden is just going to be motivated down the stretch. They're ready to go, and Dabo's, all that stuff. I think Georgia Tech's the side here. I do. I think the question is, when you handicap this game, do you believe Dabo when he says his team's going to be focused, ready to go every game the rest of the season? Or do you think that they just got really excited for a top 15 team in their building? They play North Carolina next week. They play South Carolina in that final game. They're 2 games that are probably more focused up for them. I think Georgia Tech, if the right Georgia Tech team shows up, they'll certainly make this very close. The problem is, the wrong Georgia Tech team shows up, they lose this game by 20 or 25 points, and you lose your bet. So that's the thing here, Drew. I don't believe Dabo that this team's ready to play the rest of the season. But the problem is, can you trust Georgia Tech in this situation?
We got 1 game left in the rotation, guys, and then we'll hit Matt's best bet. UConn and James Madison. We're seeing JMU -24.5 as the home favorite, 48.5 being the total. So you already mentioned, man, you're liking this JMU team. Are you liking them enough to win by nearly 4 touchdowns here, Matt?
So this is one of those games that if I was to take anything, it would be the team total. Once again, I don't have it offhand because obviously it's a Virginia school, so therefore I can't see these things. But to me, this is James Madison's final 3 games are UConn at home, App State at home, at Coastal Carolina. Their offense has been tremendous so far this season. UConn, I think, is done. I think UConn doesn't want to play anymore. I think UConn's done with the season. They just lost 59-3 at Tennessee. It's a Tennessee team that's been good offensively, not great. JMU arguably has had pretty good offensive numbers themselves. I'd look at the JMU offensive team total over here, more so because I think, asking them to cover the large number, they have conference games coming up. I'll say this, I will ask, because I have the coach, Kurt Signetti, on my radio show tomorrow. I'll ask him about his approach to a game like this, his thoughts on playing a non-conference game this late in the season. Does he change things up? Does he try and get more reps for maybe the backup quarterback for a situation down the line? So maybe stay tuned with that tomorrow when I have him on my show.
Follow him on Twitter at MidMajorMatt, ESPN Richmond. I think you might be onto something, though. That quote unquote word quit in sports betting, that could be a good one to find and to research there. And if you think what the Huskies have kind of quit on the season, this would be a good team to kind of lay the wood with, I would think, Matt.
Yeah, when you play a lot of JMU, when they played a lot of bad FCS teams and when they play a lot of bad FBS teams, they would beat them up pretty good. And that's when the games are in September and October and early on before the conference schedule. You can kind of line things up a little bit. This game's in November. And so one of the things I like to do occasionally when it comes to these sort of things, Drew, is look at a coach's history when they have games like this. Now, JMU, obviously, second year in the FBS, you can't really compare that to very much. But you have to kind of look at a coach's history. Do they treat these games like anything else and they're just going to go, blast them and then move on? Or are they going to play a lot of different players? Are they going to play backups in this sort of thing? So maybe not necessarily in this situation, but in others like this with late non-conference games, check out what they do. Next week, Drew, we're going to have the old SEC bye week where they all play bad teams and get ready for those rivalry games. Certain coaches treat those games different than other coaches do.
That's a great point. Yeah, Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, they're not necessarily looking to run it up. Josh Heupel, maybe a little bit. So we get, the best bet, which Matt mentioned here, guys, that is coming up right now, NC State and Wake Forest. But first, shout out to the sponsors of the show. We really appreciate them. Guys, check them out, VivaTequilaSeltzer.com, 4.5% ABV, zero sugar, VivaTequilaSeltzer.com. Get it ordered to your house. And betonline.ag. You're looking for a good sports book. Go check out betonline.ag. The game starts here. 2:00 Eastern, NC State and Wake Forest. Matt, 43.5 being the total. You can get it -2 or -2.5. That's the Wolfpack as the road favorite. What are you looking to do here?
So obviously, I would love for NC State to win this game. I have over 6.5. I have a small piece at over 7. This would be their 7th win of the season. They still have 2 other opportunities afterwards. They play at Virginia Tech and they host North Carolina. So it's not a must for my futures for the preseason. NC State's coming off of a home. First off, they're coming off a bye week. Then they're coming off an emotional home win against Clemson. They're coming off an emotional home win against Miami. Now they hit the road to play Wake Forest. Interesting story yesterday. Their starting quarterback, MJ Morris, is redshirting after playing 4 games. He was the quarterback for those last 2 games. Remember, Brennan Armstrong started. Brennan Armstrong was terrible for NC State. They took him out. They put MJ Morris in. MJ Morris wasn't great, but he won the games for these guys. And now he's redshirting, and a lot of the speculation is that he may transfer out of the program. He wants to preserve his eligibility for the next place that he's going to be. I don't think that's a great look here. I don't think that's a great look for a school that, you win 2 big games and the quarterback's like, peace out, I'm out of here. You got Wake Forest. They lost a tough game to Duke last Thursday. They've got 2 extra days to prepare for this one. Dave Clawson, one of the better coaches in college football, one of the better offensive coaches.
Oh, no, guys. Looks like Matt froze up. So we'll see if he comes back. If not, sounds like the best bet is in here. But a situation, I'll tell you guys, I mean, when he brought up MJ Morris and transferring out or going to redshirt, I would like to know, I was going to ask Matt, would that be the player saying, okay, I don't want to lose my eligibility or transferring out? Or is this the coach kind of suggesting that? Because Matt's right. That isn't a good look. That is not a good look for kind of a player to do that. But yeah, guys, sorry about the. Looks like we might have him back here. Just give me a second. Maybe not, guys. So that's gonna have to probably do it for the podcast. Matt, you back?
Yes. We took
right.
a little hit here or something. The internet went out for 30 seconds. Did I leave everybody in a spoiler alert here? Did I not finish?
You did not finish. No, I was filling time and bringing up your MJ Morris of this kind of, I don't know, unique situation where the winner of the last 2 games, the quarterback's just not going to play any more games. That's just weird, man. I don't even know how to handicap it. I don't think it's a positive. particularly if it's the player doing it, like rather than the coach kind of suggesting it, maybe that might not be as bad, but it just kind of throws off the locker room, I would think. But yeah, man, if you just want to recap what the best bet is before we get out of here.
Yeah, and you've got a Wake Forest team that's not playing its best, but you've got Dave Clawson with a couple extra days to prepare and a potentially not necessarily an unmotivated by the NC State team, but like you're going from 2 emotional games to this one. Give me Wake Forest plus the points. Sprinkle on the money line here. I think Wake Forest wins this game. I'll take the 2.5. I think is what you mentioned as the best line is. I think Wake Forest bounces back and gets the win here. It would be such an NC State thing to do, to win at home against Clemson, win at home against Miami, and then go to Wake Forest and lose this game. So give me Wake plus the points with a little sprinkle on the old Wake Forest money line.
The Demon Deacons plus 2.5 for the best bet. Matt Josephs, ESPN Richmond, at Mid-Major Matt on Twitter. Our leadoff hitter, guys, at 5 o'clock Eastern. We're going live with Jeff Nadeau in part number 2 here. Every game on the board, wherever you're downloading your podcast at. Check it out. Apple, Spotify, it is there. And it is growing, so we appreciate it. If you could rate it, smash that like button, that all helps. So, Matt, great stuff as always, man. Cash those tickets this weekend.
Yep. Good luck to everybody.